Subscribe my channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.
That is one cocky little squirrel.
It's happening here. It's happening here.
Hi Kurt, welcome to Daydreamers, the place where I feature people who dream with their eyes wide open.
Well, thank you, Himika. It's wonderful to be seeing you and speaking to you.
Absolutely. So I'm going to get to the question straight away, and I'm going to talk about your journey with QYou Media. And the first, most important part of the question, why is the name QYou Media? Tell me more about this name.
Well, that's kind of a long and funny story, actually. But when we got together to start this business, the business was really all about finding the best videos on YouTube. Because at that time, this was now over 6 years ago, video on Instagram and Facebook and platforms, WhatsApp, etc., was not really happening yet. It was really YouTube was the short form video content creator and digital platform. And on other platforms, it was really just still images, pictures at that point. Long before, obviously, something like TikTok started. So the idea was we were queuing up videos from YouTube for you, the viewer, and that's still part of what we're really trying to do. It's just expanded across a larger number of social video platforms than just YouTube. So the original idea was that we wanted to call the company The Q, just the letter Q, and we couldn't get that trademarked because you can't trademark the letter Q. It's impossible. So then we went through a bunch of. At one point, the company was going to be called Q, like CUE, like Q something up. And that's the direction we went. And we couldn't trademark that name either. And one of our co-founders, who was one of the founding executives of the original MTV back in the early 80s, a guy named Les Garland, he came from the radio business. And in the radio in the United States, they have what are classification, which are 4 letters. So like a radio station called KNBC. Or there's a station here in Los Angeles called K-Rock, K-R-O-Q. So K-Rock and radio station call letters are 4 letters. And part of our model was we were like a radio station format. So a radio station, if you're a rock radio station, you're playing the best rock music. If you're a classical radio station, you're playing the best classical music. So we were playing the best YouTube videos. So we said, what if we have call letters like a radio station, QYou, and you'll just call it the Q. Like K-Rock isn't KROQ, it's K-Rock. So what we also thought, mistakenly, was that when we put the words together, QYOU, that people would just roll the 4 letters together and call it Q. We were very wrong about that. What we found out very shortly was that when we named the company, because we could get that name as a brand, QYOU, that didn't exist anywhere, and we said, okay, well, we're queuing up the best of YouTube, so it's the Q and the U, but everybody will just call it Q, like you put the 4 letters together and pronounce the word Q. No one does that. One person out of 1,000 does that. Everybody says QYou. And so for the first 2 years of the business, we kept calling ourselves the Q, the Q, the Q. And people would kind of look at me like, Q, isn't it QYou? And I go, well, yeah, no, but we call it the Q. I've given up on that. So now I just refer to us as QYou Media. and we had a complete blunder in how we named our business. I joke now that we were all kind of senior executives from major companies, and we branded our company with a name that no one can pronounce the way we wanted to. So anyway, that's the story behind QYou, but it's all about queuing up the best content for our users.
Okay, you and I have spoken in length about your business model, but a lot of viewers today who are going to be seeing this video do not know about it. A lot of them do not. So can you talk about your business model? What does QYou essentially do?
Yeah, what I come out of, as you know, I come out of the traditional media business, meaning traditional television initially as a producer and then as a distributor. And in the traditional media business, which what I mean by that is the traditional motion picture and television industries, content is sold and resold and resold and resold and repackaged and resold. So if you did a movie, whether it's a Bollywood movie or a Hollywood movie, it doesn't make any difference. When you do a movie, you do that movie initially to go into movie theaters. This is, of course, pre-COVID, when movie theaters were still open. And so you would go into a movie theater, but then that movie, when it came out of what was called its first run in the movie theater, it would then move to television. You'd then put it out on home video, initially on VHS, then DVD. Then it would go into what was called syndication, where it would play on another channel. And a movie studio would have a library of content that they resell over and over again. So if you made a movie in 1983 in Bollywood, you might be playing that movie on a service today as a classic Bollywood movie that people still watch. What was interesting to us in the digital world was that people were not reselling their content on different platforms. So if you were a YouTuber when we started and you created content for YouTube, that was the only place you saw it, was on YouTube. It wasn't redistributed on other platforms. There really weren't other platforms. And the other thing was, is YouTubers were complaining about they couldn't monetize the content as well as they wanted to off of just the one platform, YouTube. So the real business model behind the company is saying short form digital content that's created by the new generation of digital content creators, which now goes across YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, Snapchat, Facebook, TikTok, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure there are others and many, and there will be more. It's about us finding that content, repackaging that content in some form. For us, it's what we would call more of a television format, but then redistributing that through other areas. So, for example, this very show that you're creating, well, you're creating it potentially for Facebook or Instagram or whatever platform is your initial platform of distribution. You're ultimately going to create an asset of video content. Well, why not repackage that video content and put it onto a different platform? So that's really what our business is fundamentally about. At the end of the day, as we get data back from the platforms that we're showing that content on. So a good example, I mean, in India, well-known social content creator there is Miss Malini. Well, Miss Malini isn't typically showing that program on television. She's only showing it in social platforms. And so we take Miss Malini's programming, we repackage, and then you can watch it on Tata Sky or Airtel DTH or City Cable or whatever it might be. You can also watch it on JIO TV as part of our stream. It's about getting the content to be out in more places. My big belief, and I tell people this story all the time, 2 years ago, Netflix in the year 2019, so actually a year ago, licensed the entire season of the television series Friends, okay, for $100 million for 1 year. 1 year for Friends for Netflix, okay? So the logical question is, why would you pay $100 million for a show that's already played on TV for years? It's already played on syndication. It's already been repackaged and put out on home video. It's already been on digital platforms like iTunes. You can see it in a million different places. You can get it on pirated websites. There's a million opportunities to have watched Friends. It's because it's valuable content and people want to watch it again. And there are constantly new audiences who haven't seen it. We live in an age of an endless amount of content that's being produced and created. So what QYou Media is all about, notice I said QYou, what QYou Media is all about is about presenting, packaging the best of that content and putting it in one place. The other example I use is many stores now, it doesn't matter whether it's Louis Vuitton or Nike, they may have their own destination store that you can go to. So you may have your own destination that you've created as a content creator that people can go to. But that's only one point of exposure. Nike still puts their tennis shoes into department stores. Louis Vuitton puts their purses and handbags into other stores that are aggregating high-end designer clothing and designer products. We're the same thing. We're taking the best digital content, stuff that we think is the most appealing, and we're presenting it in a package that says, if you watch the Q, you know all of our content's already been curated and placed there for a reason.
Okay. Again, now coming to influencer marketing. When I was going through your website, influencer marketing is a very big role in your work. How is it really, how does this really work?
Well, the business model for the company ultimately is advertising based. So the way that we ultimately generate revenue comes through advertising, promotions, marketing, etc. The content creators that we license and repackage content from, for the most part, make their livings, they make their money by being influencers. What does that mean? That means that they have a brand or a product that is looking to align themselves with that individual creator's content to reach the community and audience that they're attracting, to try to get them to speak to that audience. Now, what's happened is the new generation of millennial and Gen Z viewers that exist everywhere in the world, not just the United States and India, those viewers are not watching and sitting still anymore for 30-second television spots or 15-second television spots. In the digital world, the so-called pre-roll, the commercial pre-roll before videos, a lot of people are using ad blockers that are blocking that content. So we're big believers that the content is the advertisement. The content is the promotional tool. I mean, the biggest, in the old days when I was producing content, it was just referred to as product placement. So somebody would be in a scene and they'd be drinking a Heineken beer, and they wouldn't say anything about it. Well, Heineken paid the movie studio or the television company to put that Heineken beer into that show. One of the most famous product placement campaigns in history was the Aston Martin campaign that was the James Bond car. James Bond drove an Aston Martin, and so that was product placement. You just associated the vehicle Aston Martin with somebody who's cool and, does cool things, et cetera, et cetera. The drink Red Bull became the most famous company, creating a whole company. It's now called Red Bull Media House. From years ago, they created an entire company around creating media that was their brand identity. So as time goes forward, we're big believers that the content that's created has to embed in it products and product placements that are meaningful to people. It may be as sort of obvious and transparent as someone like yourself say that you are going to start to create online seminars that people were actually going to pay money for, to get into like-minded communities and groups to talk about how they're creating their businesses. Just as an example, you might use this free content and this content that you're putting out to promote the paid virtual learning groups that you're putting on. That would just be one example. So the influencer marketing part of our business is all of the content creators that we feature are organically influencers. That's how they make their business. Miss Malini is an influencer. And so, or even if it was a show from Pocket Aces in India or wherever it might be, those people are influencing through the programming they're creating and have brands associated with that. We're the same thing. Here in the United States, we do it more overtly. We actually do it for third parties, and we've been hurt actually this quarter by COVID because our business really revolved around promoting motion picture releases in theaters. So if there was a big movie like Charlie's Angels or Trolls World Tour or whatever the movie might be, going into movie theaters from a major studio like Universal or Sony or Warner Brothers, we would create a campaign with TikTokers or Instagrammers or whoever it may be to promote that movie through their social media sites. And we still do that. But part of our business around QYou Media and ultimately with Q India is to integrate that into our programming. So we could take a brand and give the brand the traditional 30-second and 15-second pre-rolls and spots, but we could also create branded programming around that. So that's why influencer marketing is kind of the I guess I would call it the driver for everything that we're going to do to monetize our business going forward.
The world looks towards America for a lot of learnings. I want to understand, how is the startup culture in America? You have been part of some major media organizations, and now you have a company of your own, which is not a very new company now. It's been a few years, but still a new company.
Yeah.
How is the startup culture there? What is it for us to learn? Because in India, we still would look to America to learn a lot of things.
Well, I think the American dream, the so-called American dream, which one today I think can probably scoff at a bit more than in the past. America was kind of founded on this concept that people could come here and achieve their dreams. It was kind of a fundamental. Under our current governmental leadership, it's a little bit less obvious than it was before, but it remains a core, I would say, a core value in the U.S. It's sort of like when you're a kid, it's like, well, anybody can become president. Obviously, with Donald Trump, I guess that is true. But sorry, we won't get into politics. I think the American dream concept remains alive here. It has been beaten down a little bit, and I think it goes all the way back to the original people who came to America. It definitely is embedded somewhat in the Wild West, the whole dream of the Western person going and starting their own land, and the gold rush in California, where I live, and all of that. People like Walt Disney, et cetera, et cetera. And why is Elon Musk here in America doing what he's doing? So I think that's very much part of just sort of the fiber of the country. I also think that the U.S. has always held a position in the world of technology that we live in now, has always kind of held a leadership position there through places like Harvard and Stanford and MIT and companies like Microsoft and Apple and even Tesla, et cetera, and back in the Ford Motor Cars, et cetera, et cetera. It's always kind of held this position of being a place where invention has happened and things have been created. I mean, even going back to the Wright brothers with flight, you can just go on and on with examples of this. And so I think that still holds, is that people here feel that. My personal experience is I've always kind of been part of either startups or emerging market companies. That's just my thing. Probably if QYou Media ever does become successful, please let that happen. If QYou Media does become successful, I'll probably get bored with it and want to do something else. I was part of my career. I was part of cable and satellite television when it started. The first show I ever did was for this new channel that launched called the Disney Channel, which people didn't think was going to be successful. The next thing I did was produce for over a decade for another new channel called MTV. No one ever thought MTV when it started was going to be successful. People used to say back then, when CNN started, well, how's that going to work? Who's going to watch news 24 hours a day? How would that ever succeed? So it was just a very different, it seems impossible now to think that way, but trust me, people thought that way then. I then got into the home video business when home video first started. I got into the CD-ROM business when CD-ROM first started. I started a company that started delivering movies and TV shows over the internet when the internet first started in 1999. And we started this company, which is a new concept of aggregating and curating best of digital content and online and socially driven video. So that's kind of what I like. And I think that the startup mentality is just part of the American dream at the end of the day. And, I just kind of, sometimes to a fault, I think, I like to try to achieve the impossible. And many times you don't get there, but I think it's something that, sorry, I'm going to move this off my screen. But I think it's just part of the fiber of what I'm about and what the U.S. remains about.
You also did mention you also shot with Madonna. You have an MTV Lifetime Achievement Award to your name.
Yes, this is all true. This is all true. The 80s and early 90s, I produced. I've never actually counted. Someday I'll probably should do that. But I probably produced 250 or 300 music videos, concerts, events, and things all associated with, many of the biggest rock stars of that era. Some of them are, I can't believe a band like the Rolling Stones or, and a lot of these rock stars, a lot of them are still out making records and touring, which is pretty amazing. But MTV then, interestingly enough, MTV was a cultural phenomenon. It wasn't just a channel. It became the sort of voice of the young generation, what we would call now the younger millennial and probably more the Gen Z age group, 25 and under. And we hope QYou Media can become a bit of a voice like that, specifically in India going forward, but we'll see. We're not there yet.
You will get there someday, I'm sure.
Hope so.
And since we were talking about India, you have mentioned to me in the past that India is very important for your business. So please tell me, why is the India piece so important to the QYou model, or what role does India really play to the QYou model? Why is India important?
Well, as your viewers won't know, but the only reason Q India exists is because of you, because you were able to finagle a business class ticket for me. So otherwise there would be no QYou India, and I would have never set foot in India. So if this succeeds, it's due to you, and if it fails, it's due to you. So there's a lot of pressure on you right now.
You want to tell the story?
In all my world travels, which I've been all over the world throughout my career, I had never set foot in India until actually we met, and I became immediately fascinated with Indian, what was happening there from a business point of view, from a cultural point of view. It's just a fascinating part of the world. And obviously there's a massive population there, that goes without saying. But I also think that the India landscape, particularly in the media telecommunications area, is particularly fascinating. I mean, it's going way beyond, just Bollywood and sort of local content. And so I think that when I went there, as you may or may not recall, the opening speech for FICCI Frames that year was a gentleman by the name of Mukesh Ambani announcing the launch of his new platform called JIO. And I remember hearing that and thinking, God, if this guy does half of what he says he's going to do, it's going to revolutionize this entire country. And I would argue that it largely has. I mean, Facebook during COVID just made its largest single investment in its history of 5.7 billion US dollars into JIO. And that was followed by a number of other large private equity firms largely from the U.S., that put another $3 billion into Jio. I think Jio's raised about $10 billion in the last 3 months. And that's indicative to me of what's happening. Amazon is rumored right now to be investing $2 billion into Bharti Airtel. Amazon and Netflix have both made India one of their most important territories for the growth of their subscription video on demand platforms. One of the main reasons Disney bought Fox was because they wanted to get their hands on Star and Hotstar. So I'm not a visionary. I'm not the first guy to think that India is an important territory. I do believe
The Q, the path breaker, the risk taker, the one and only
Presenting
The Q.
I'm taking it solo. I'm a kid on the get-go.
ओह चकाचौंध है
I'm taking it all. I'm running my own show.
स्वैग से करेंगे सबका स्वागत
Music change.
The pioneering brand that brings the best of digital to television. The fastest growing television channel where India comes to escape into a world of unique shows and characters. The Q keeps its viewers engaged with the most happening content from the world of web. The Q is available on linear broadcast, OTT and digital platform with an ever-increasing distribution web. The Q interacts directly with its viewers through multiple touchpoints across social media. The Q also has an impressive army of social media influencers and is a leading hub for influencer marketing. The perfect platform for brands to reach out to their audiences from multiple avenues. The rising star in the world of entertainment. The Q.
ये नया हिंदुस्तान है
that there is just a tremendous opportunity there because for our business, because number one, there's a massive and ever-growing number of digital content creators and social media content creators in India across all of the platforms there. I mean, TikTok, while it's controversial because of the Chinese stuff, TikTok, the fastest growing platform in the world right now is India. YouTube, India is massively important. Obviously, Snapchat's starting to take off in India. For Facebook and WhatsApp, India is massively important. So there's not one company that's involved in the area of media or communications that isn't keenly focused on the growth that's happening in India. Why is that? The growth of education there, even not just in the cities, but in the rural areas, continues to go. Things like geofiber, connected TVs and people out in these rural areas to more and more learning and communication is happening. So, 10 years from now, I personally believe India will be the most impactful and powerful country in the world in terms of media and communications. And I think I'm not the only one, obviously, by virtue of these things that I'm talking about, that believes that to be true. So that's why India is so important to us.
You are also a listed organization.
Yes.
What did that do for your organization? Did it change things for QYou?
It's a double-edged sword, honestly. It has advantages and disadvantages.
The
The prime
exchange, right? The Toronto Stock Exchange.
Well, on the what's called the Toronto Stock Exchange venture market, and also here in the U.S. on the OTT market. It's very much a double-edged sword. Our stock really hasn't performed. Part of that is because it's taken longer for us to develop what we want to develop, which is pretty much always the case. I always tell people with startups, there's two things that I can guarantee you with a startup. It will take longer than whatever you think in your most conservative estimate, and it will cost more money than whatever you think. So whatever your budget is, quadruple it or quintuple it. Whatever the amount of time is, quadruple it or quintuple it. It's extraordinarily uncommon for startups to have trajectories that are faster, and both in terms of economics and capturing what they've done faster. It's very rare. I always joke. I said we'll be an overnight success in 10 years because that's generally about how long it takes. The listing its benefit is that because there's liquidity for investors, for private investors, if you're a venture capital investor or a private equity investor, there's not what's known as liquidity, meaning the investors can make money out of their investment until there's a sale of that business because it's a privately held company. In a public vehicle, investors can get in and out of the company and sell shares or buy shares. And so that's the primary difference. What that means is it provides a bit more opportunity to raise capital. It makes it a little easier to raise capital, especially when the company's not doing well, ironically, because it's much easier for almost any company, public or private, to raise money when the company's not doing well. When the company's doing well, rather. When the company's not doing well, in most venture capital companies invest on a 20%, 10% basis. They expect 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 of the companies they invest in to lose all their money, and in order to get 1 or 2 hits. It's not unlike the movie studios, really. When they release movies, they expect 2 that are big hits to propel the losses that they take on the other 6 or 7 or 8 films out of 10. So in venture investing is much the same. Startups are much the same. Most startups do not succeed. So the public company vehicle allows us to raise capital, but other than that, you also have to report your results on a quarterly basis, which means if you're not doing well, every 3 months, I always say it's like washing your dirty linen in public. There's no way around it. You have to do it. And so that's become painful during quarters when we haven't performed the way we expected to. But yes, we are publicly listed.
All right.